Welcome everyone to our final brown bag session associated with the Smithsonian exhibit at Artworks and its Voices and Votes. And we've had a wide range of topics that we've covered, and our finale today is talking about the nuts and bolts and mechanics of getting elected. And we have two of our current elected officials with us today, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and you're going to see on the screen for a minute kind of an outline of what they're going to talk about, and then we'll come back to live.
Let me go first. Okay. I have been politically active most of my life. I grew up in a family that worked on campaigns and discussed politics at all levels of government. I never thought I'd run for office, even though friends have been asking me to run for many years. My dream job was to work for a politician, and I could follow them to DC. After being an activist and not getting appointed to city or county committees I was interested in, I thought it was time to be on the other side of the table and become an elected official and serve the people. So when the county Democratic commissioner who I campaigned for decided to switch parties on deadline to run for the second term, it was time to run for office. I enjoy serving District 6 and the county, and I've met so many new people in our county as I listen to their opinions and concerns. It has truly been a learning transition in my life as I take on the responsibilities to serve the people and value their trust given to me as I study material so I can make decisions on how to properly spend tax dollars to provide services in our county.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Jennifer Cochran. I am currently sitting on the Big Rapids City Commission. As you'll learn as we go through our presentation today, Wendy and I have very different avenues that brought us to public service. I only started my career about 6 years ago when I volunteered to sit on the City Planning Commission, and my reason for doing that was simply because I had determined that I needed to understand better how city government works, and I couldn't think of a better way to do that than to be on the inside. I had the great good fortune in 2017 to be appointed to fill the seat that was vacated by now Mayor Tom Hoganson. So I was very fortunate to get 2 years of experience before running for office. I then ran legitimately for my seat in 2019, won my election, and so I am now serving 2 years elected, but 4 years altogether on that august body. What Wendy and I would like to do today is go through some topics with you and share our experiences and whatever wisdom we have gained from those experiences, hopefully to encourage you to put your hat in the ring and stand for office and or get involved in other ways in serving on government boards and commissions. You may see that there is a brief outline, I believe, on your screen. So I just wanted to go through the broad strokes of what we're going to talk about. And then we're just going to have a discussion about each of those categories and how we manage with that. So first of all, we're going to perhaps elaborate a little bit more on how we got started, each of us. It's a very different story because Wendy has a long experience and I just woke up about 6 years ago. The next thing we want to talk about then is what are the things that you should think about and consider before you choose to run. If you have made the decision to run, what is involved once you have decided to run? What are the things that you need to be concerned about? Then we're going to talk about the process of campaigning and what is all entailed in that. Some other considerations that you might want to think about. And if we have time, once you've been elected, what's a good way to get going on your newly elected career? So with that, that's our broad strokes. Wendy just gave you a little bit of background on how she got started, but I'm going to ask her to say a little bit more about her family background with politics, because I think it's valuable to hear, and then I'm going to chime in as well. So off we go.
Well, my mother and father were very involved working on campaigns. I grew up in Minnesota, St. Paul, Minnesota. And my mother often worked at campaign offices, or we had candidates come to our house. And since I've been able to lick a back of an envelope, children were always there. They were in the campaign out. There was always a group of us kids hanging out. And I mean, I even remember the babies being laid on the winter coats on the floor. That's all the space that we had. So, and then when I moved to Texas, my dad got transferred to Texas in my 20s. I went along and I had the opportunity to work on Ann Richards' campaign, who a lot of people know, especially women. She was an exciting candidate to run for governor of Texas. And just everywhere I've gone, I've been involved. You know, I've gone to meetings. When I was in college, I have a urban planning degree and a minor in political science and a little pre-law. And so I always thought I'd either be involved, work for a city or a candidate, because I do like government. I believe in government, even if when we have our little problems and our ups and downs. And I believe everybody should be able to vote. So it's exciting and it's fun. And it's fun to meet all the people that come and get involved.
Well, I have a rather different story. And the reason I think this is valuable for you to hear is because, number one, I think I'm proof positive that you're never too old to get into this. Brandy, as I mentioned before, we represent the opposite ends of the continuum, where she's had a lifetime exposure to this and has been indoctrinated, inculcated into it, and it's just a part of her being. I was not particularly politically aware. I did my graduate work in education. I have had a career in higher ed, teaching. And of course, what becomes interesting about that is that I'm bringing a lot of that background to the position I'm serving right now. I believe in education. And more recently, speaking for myself, I came to recognize that I did not understand how city government works nearly as well as I thought I ought to. And the other thing that drove me to seek office was, once I had retired from my job at Central Michigan University, I was asking myself, what is a great way that I could serve this community of Big Rapids? So all of those things coming together, it is probably one of the best ways I know to learn how government works is to get involved in government. And that is not just from the elected positions, but from the volunteer boards and commissions that you can be serving on. It is a humbling experience. There's a big learning curve. I can tell you when I sat on the planning commission, which has to do with land use and site review and understanding all of that, it was a big learning curve, but it was very valuable, great people to work with. And so you really come to understand better how the boards, the elected boards, make their decisions and your role as an active citizen in engaging with those boards. So
couldn't do it without those boards.
you could not do it without.
You could not do it without those boards. They do like so much of the homework for you.
So obviously, before you decide to run, it's not a, if you're running for office, it's not a small decision. There are some things that you want to think about. And probably, I don't know, Wendy, you can weigh in on this, but the first and most important question I would ask is, why do you want to serve? Wendy talked about believing in government. Why do you want to serve? You want to have some kind of influence in the decisions that are getting made for your community, understanding how the things work, moving the city forward, whatever it happens to be. But this is the thing you want to ask yourself, why do I want to serve? One of the things that you want to be aware of if you're running for one of the boards is, what is the work that is involved? Wendy can speak to this. Wendy on the county commission has actual committee assignments. And I'll let her tell you about those. You know, the city commission, we do not. I have extra work that I engage in because I want to volunteer on various subcommittees that are involved with work to move us forward. But maybe Wendy can talk about the assignment
Yeah,
situation.
every year the county commission votes who the chairperson is and the vice chair, and in January. And the chairperson, along with our administrator and the vice chair, they send us a list of all the committees and commissions involved in the county and outside the county. And then you fill out the list that you'd like to be appointed to. And then the chairperson appoints you to those committees or commissions or boards. Like this year I got on DHHS board.
Are you required to have a certain number of things?
No.
No.
And like if you could only do 4, you would tell the chairperson that. Like if somebody who works full time, I'm lucky at like Jennifer. I was published. I'm an author, and so I had a schedule I could easily work around. Because a lot of the meetings are during the day. Even our county commission meetings are twice a month, and then I'm on 8 committees and boards. This time, the first time I was 6, which was good, and I'm learning a lot. And the chairperson was kind enough to put me on some new committees this year in January. And so I'm learning a whole lot of new things. January and February, I was just reading and I had to go through orientation with some of the groups to get me up to speed. I highly recommend going to the websites and looking at the various committees and groups, and they post their, like there's a comprehensive plan and there's
What are some of the ones that you're on right now?
I am on the Sheriff and Jail, DHSS, Michigan Works. Those are ones that take me out of town sometimes. Well, not with Zoom now, but they have taken me out of town. Equalization, grounds and building and grounds.
Okay, so that's a wide range of things.
Yes, it's a right, yeah, which is, and then, others are personnel, finance. And actually, I got Zoom this year being on Zoom has helped me go to visit the other committees that I'm not on, just so I could see what I did try to go to meetings in 2019, but you can only have so many hours, but Zoom lets you.
And so all of these are open to the public, right?
Yes, they're all open to the public.
So one of the things you might want to do before you decide to run is go sit down on some of these and see what they talk about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It really underscores another important thing that you need to think about before you make this decision, and that is the commitment of time that is required. County commission with the assigned committees, it takes a great deal of time.
I figure about 10 to 15 hours a week. I actually
And that's in
kept
addition
track
to
of it.
the meetings. That's in addition to attending the meetings.
No, that included the meetings. Yeah, that included the meetings for me. But
That's a part-time job.
yeah, it's a part.
Yeah.
Well, and we're considered county employees, county commissioners. The pay is part-time. So that's a nice benefit of, I believe the city
City is saying that we are considered city employees. It's a part-time.
I wasn't sure if
pay.
it was a stipend.
For
or-
sure not into it for the money.
No, yeah, you're not into it.
But, just things like city commission requires 2 evenings a month, the first and third Mondays, unless that schedule changes due to elections being held the following day. The other aspect of it, which I feel is really important, is, of course, that you want to make sure you have the time to read the materials And I usually end up reading through them twice,
Yeah, me too.
particularly areas where I'm not as comfortable or I'm not as well versed. And my advice, of course, with that is anything that you come across that you don't understand, I make notes when I'm reading through my packets. Any questions that I have, I make sure I ask them before the meeting of the people who have the expertise to answer that. But it is really important that you not be afraid to ask questions. You don't know what you don't know.
You need to read and ask questions.
You need to read and ask questions. For other things, from some of the material is rather mundane, but other things require research.
Yes.
Really needing to understand what the context of the issue is, perhaps what a history of the voting has been on it, if that's necessary. For topics that are more controversial, you need to do your homework. So
Community input.
community
Should
input,
read it. Pay
absolutely,
attention, listen to the community.
absolutely.
Um,
One other thing that you might consider, and I know Wendy has brought this up, if you are thinking about running, is to kind of gauge the level of support you might have
yes.
with your friends and loved ones.
Running an election, and local, even local, you do need a team.
Mhm.
You do need, and you need people to give you advice, and then you make your plan. Because
Yeah.
it is time. Campaigning is time consuming. You only do it for a few months of the year where you're really intense on it, but you really should take the time to make the plan of when to,
Right.
and who's there to help you. And in my case, I needed donations as well.
So once you make the decision, and we're encouraging you to do so, the first question is, what is your process for getting on the ballot?
Yes.
And Wendy and I will say this loudly, clearly, and often. Find out who your clerk is, get to know them, make them your friend.
That's right.
For those who may not know this, Marcy Purcell
Is
is the county clerk. Tammy Gillis is the city clerk. Both hugely helpful. They are the ones responsible for elections. They have all the materials.
All the information.
They follow the schedule. So get to know who your clerk is and introduce yourself to them.
And write down the dates they give you.
Well, when you decide to run for an election, you're going to get a packet of information.
Yeah.
You're going to get a sheet of instructions, several forms that you need to fill out, including your nominating petition, which you take around for the signatures that you need, which is what you need to get onto the ballot. So the very first thing I strongly encourage you to do once you have your packet is find a quiet place, sit down and go through it carefully. What I did was to make a timeline for myself with all of the due dates for the various forms or whatever needed to be picked up or turned in. Hugely helpful because it is important to meet deadlines.
And in my case, only people and it's the same with Jennifer, the only people that can sign your nomination is people in your district. The county commission is broken down into 7 districts. And you only have city.
We don't have districts, but we have to have city residents. Yeah. And you will see, do you want to hold this up? Okay, this is what a nominating petition looks like. You will find that there is a minimum number that you must have and a maximum number that you can have. And what the clerks will tell you, because the clerks have to verify every signature on your petition. They will match, they go through the same verification process, I think, that they do for the elections. So the advice is to make sure that you have more than the minimum. You can go up to the maximum, but have enough such that it gives the clerks a little wiggle room if there are a small number that perhaps they cannot verify. Right?
And it's fun.
Yeah, I think for city, the minimum was 25, the maximum was 40. I ended up submitting 40 signatures, and I think Tammy discovered that about 5 of them were verifiable. So, but that still put me within the range.
I only needed 10 to 15. And I think I had 20.
So it's good to get a couple extra in case somebody
should get
doesn't
extra.
know, for instance, what district they're in.
Yeah, that's why politicians are out saying, will you sign my petition? Because you need extra.
Yeah, and I'll
Even
just
though none of mine were.
just say this, because what you find with this process is there's a lot of paperwork, and there's a lot of instructions.
It's
and
easy paperwork.
It's
though.
easy paperwork. You just need to be mindful and pay attention and fill it out the way you are told to fill it out. just that simple.
Yeah,
It is, but it isn't. It is, but it isn't.
But yeah, this is
Okay, so
just a little packet, like 4 pages, and then they give you the candidate committee information.
right.
That's nothing to fill out, but that's just the information.
Now, another aspect to be aware of, once you decide you're going to run, is whether or not you need a budget. Fundraising, there are some rules around that in terms of reporting. In my case, well, the rule was if you plan to spend less than $1,000, you don't need to report it. And I did not plan to spend more than $1,000, so that was the route that I went. But if you have a campaign that's going to, you think you're going to spend more than $1,000, then there are forms and processes that you need to follow for.
In local campaigns, I didn't go over 1,000 either. I came close, but
Yeah.
the first time I'm on my second term. I should have said that, my second term. And not only do you have to report it locally, if it's over 1,000, you have to report it to the state and federal government. And that is complicated paperwork. That is complicated.
Yeah, and if you are going that route, there are people that can help you through that. You're never alone in this process, so just be aware of that. Another thing you want to be aware of is there is a certain time before which you can't start collecting signatures, so you need to wait until the right time to start collecting signatures. And then, of course, there's a deadline for handing it all in. And again, in deference to the clerk, you want them to be on your side. Don't leave your handing in till the very last minute, because they do need about 2 to 3 days to verify those signatures. So kind of being mindful of what the clerk needs to do as well as what you need to do is an important aspect of this.
And the paperwork is usually available between February through April, and you have to have it in usually by July, the first couple weeks of July.
So that's once you decide to run, and then of course you get to campaigning, which is the fun part.
Yes, it is.
And first of all, kind of dovetailing with the budgeting, what kinds of materials are you going to produce to use? Wendy, I don't know if you can you see this on the screen? Okay, Wendy brought an example of a yard sign. And one thing I learned about having yard signs is you want to be mindful of your color scheme to make it visible from the road while people are driving. And you want it easy to read so that they're not taking their eyes off the road too long to read your sign. So and I learned that from my sign makers. Your name, what you're running for, possibly the date on the...
And all your literature has to have paid for by the committee to elect. Mine says Wendy Nystom, and your address of your campaign, which locally ours is at our home. Some people get P.O. boxes.
Right.
All your literature has to have that.
Right, correct. One other thing to be mindful of with signs is where you can and cannot stick them. In the city, I'm not sure about the county when you can respond to that. In the city, you cannot have political signs in the city right of way. So that means not on the lawn part next to the curb. So what I ended up doing, of course, was contacting people, asking their permission to put my sign in their yard. And then it had to be in the bottom of the yard near the sidewalk, not on the city right of way, which is closer to the roadway. And again, depending on how much they like you, the number of signs you can have in their yard is up to you.
That's another thing I strategized, to make sure it was on main drives where people could see it. And of course, my district is half the city and then a little piece of Big Rapids Township, even though I had people that wanted signs out of my district. But I made sure where I wanted them located in the city, I could get permission to put it in people's yards.
So other things that you might want to be spending some money on, and thinking all of this in terms of making yourself visible to the public. I found, and I think Wendy used these as well, door hangers that just have my name and my photo on them. And I wrote, canvassed neighborhoods, went house to house, and if someone wasn't home, I just wrote, "Sorry, I miss you," on my thing. But an introductory, photo and your name on one side, just a little bit of information about you on the other, I found was a very effective way to get my name out there, get what I look like out there.
They are very
effective.
effective.
It's something that they can hold in their hand.
At my first election, I had someone come up to me in Walgreens and say, "Hey, you were on my door." Then I didn't know the person. Of course, then it allowed you, it had the conversation. And
Well, and I know that our local print shops do the yard signs, and they typically do those too, the door hangers.
Yes, they do. In fact, I sadly, the company who did mine no longer is in town, but I had a local company do my signs, and they were hugely helpful in terms of also talking with me about the color scheme, because what did I know? Nothing. I like, this is a pretty color. I like this. Well, it may not be so visible. The writing needs to be visible. So on.
yeah, the name recognition is, and what you're running for is the most important. Right. You do want to do nice, fancy things, but that's.
So for your sign, you've got some design element there with the star. Did you do that yourself, or did you have a?
One of my volunteers. I don't design well, so one of my volunteers said, "What do you think of this, Wendy?" And I said, "Hey, kind of like that." And then don't put a date on it, because
use it again.
Yes.
Exactly.
I just went and got stickers that said "reelect" instead of, because I did spend, that was a big expense.
Yeah.
The signs are a big expense, and once you have them.
Sure, it's a good tip.
Yes. Now, the question of how many to order is kind of.
My volunteers and I, we argued about it for a good 20 minutes, and they finally talked me into 50.
Well,
100.
We do have a phenomenon of disappearing signs. You can kind of maybe allow for some extras just in case your signs go missing. But you want to think about how many kind of strategically, where is the most visibility? Where can you get the biggest bang for your buck in terms of placement, and so forth. And I think that combined with the door hangers usually works out to be a very good strategy. Other ways to.
I did send out postcards running the second time to the areas that spread out for me, like on 14 Mile Road. I go out to 14 Mile Road. So I got the list of the voters and I mailed them out there, and Indian Village I have in my district as well. And so that worked out well. Cut down some of my walking time. Well, and COVID was different. Because COVID, people are hesitant who was coming to the door.
Sure.
And but I did end up talking to some people, campaigning even. So that was fun.
Yeah.
And be ready for any question.
Ready for any question. And other than that, other things that you can be doing, of course, are I know that I went to talk to small groups of people. I don't know if it's viable to have what they call like a meet and greet, and you can set up a time for people just to come chat with you in a very informal setting. That's a possibility. One thing that the city did, I'm not sure if the county did this or not, the city hosted a candidate forum. There were 3 of us running that year. It's a wonderful opportunity for the public to get to know you, hear what your philosophy is, hear you answer questions of interest to them. We had prepared questions that we had ahead, we received them ahead of time so that we could think about them. Then we also fielded questions from the audience. I found that hugely helpful myself to also gauge what people are interested in and what they're concerned about. And as I said, it's also a good way to.
Artworks had us in.
Yes. Yeah. But it's about, bottom line, politics is local. Wendy likes to point out, and it's relational.
Well, and it affects you.
And it affects you. Yeah.
So it's really important who you elect to office.
Yes.
It affects you directly.
Yeah. I personally, I think it's important to know what people's philosophies are of governing. I for myself, I wanted to make it clear that I believe in making informed decisions to the very best of my ability. The other side of that, especially where you have topics that are controversial, that have kind of clear sides on either side of an issue, that people may not like everything. People are not, let me edit that. People are not going to like every decision that you make.
Nope.
But they will always understand how I make them. And what led me to make that decision. So I try to make my decision-making process visible as much as possible.
I have a whole shelf now full of information. When you get the packet, and I go, oh, I better read this. Like the equalization report when I got that. So I understood, or the budget. I mean,
yeah.
The budget is something you have to learn to understand, so why are we sending this much money, or how did this happen,
Yes.
because you are responsible for the taxpayers' money.
Yeah.
To provide the services, EMS, the county does EMS and the COA and the we collect the taxes and disperse.
Yeah. I will just tell you, when I first started, I sat down, I made appointments with the city treasurer a couple of times to go over some things. I have been very grateful for the tutelage from Lorraine James, Commissioner James, who is a wealth of financial knowledge, worked in city government for over a quarter of a century, I believe. But you just ask. You cannot be afraid to ask. You need to
they actually enjoy it.
Yeah.
Informing you. I also recommend, though, reading the comprehensive plans.
Yes.
Besides the budget, I did read the Michigan State Constitution before I was elected, and I would read the Constitution of the United States because you pledge to both and the people when you're elected. And then the terms, we never talked about that. The county commissioners are 2-year terms, and they meet, they meet twice a month also, but we meet during the day, 10 o'clock in the morning, the first Thursday of the month, and at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the third Thursday of the month. And so it's a little more, but townships meet in the evening, and some of the townships have committees, and they're 4-year terms, and all the other county elected positions, treasurer, deeds, sheriff, they're 4-year terms. We're the only 2-year terms in the county. Of course, they're talking about maybe changing that, but that'll be a while.
Yeah, city commission terms are 4 years. And we only
So you have to commit.
Yeah, we only meet in the evenings, first and third Mondays, as I mentioned earlier.
So that's nice that you're working.
Yeah. And
Most of the committee meetings are at night also, aren't they? Like many of our committee meetings on the county level are during the day. I think the planning commission meets in the evening. They met last night.
one other important thing to be aware of, and a big difference between the county commission and the city commission is that the county commission is partisan. Candidates do run on a party identification,
Now, if you don't,
whereas the city commission does not.
yeah, if you don't, like, I'm a declared Democrat. But you don't have to be a Republican or a Democrat. You can run as an independent also if you don't. That's what I've been telling people. I don't belong to either party. So we'll run as an independent, you know, if you're interested.
It's just that, you know, city
And
commission,
townships run as, they declare a party too.
so we're nonpartisan. Okay, so
But it doesn't mean, you know, all the other county commissioners are Republicans, but we all got along just fine, making decisions and discussing. That's the nice thing about, another nice thing about local politics is
Yes.
you know everybody. And it's usually
not-
calmer. If you have a disagreement, which is okay,
yeah,
because you still learn.
yeah. I know we've,
And you're relying a lot on the information from the different boards,
Yes,
correct?
Yes.
And those are nonpartisan.
correct.
So the partisan part at the local level doesn't seem to be that big a deal.
No, it's
I don't think
It sounds like it's more understanding all of the logistics of how things work and trying to decide the best way to manage.
Now, I know we've thrown a lot of information at folks,
it sounds more complex than it is, but it is. I mean,
but it's really doable. It's
Yeah.
totally doable.
No fear,
Well, we've had some visitors join us at the end of this particular session, and I think we'll just cut it short because we don't want to keep anybody from enjoying the exhibit. This is the last day, so you only have until 4 o'clock today to get in here and see it. Thank you so much, Jennifer and Wendy. This is really informative. And I don't know, I don't know about other people that have taken part in some of these brown bags and such, but I know that I've learned a lot from this exhibit and from the different speakers. And one of the things, I'll do a shameless plug here, that because of two of the ones that we had, I have asked if there's interest in starting a League of Women Voters here in Big Rapids or in Mecosta County, because we don't have one. I was surprised that we didn't have that league. And again, that's a wonderful nonpartisan way to keep our role as citizens in getting the vote out. We don't care who you are, but we want everyone to vote. And so if you have interest in that, be sure to let me know, or you can let either Jennifer or Wendy know, because they both have signed on as interested participants in developing our own league.
Can I make a quick plug?
Please.
Really quickly to wrap up. If you're not prepared to be running for office yet, but you'd like to get a taste of what government is like, please consider volunteering for one of our boards or commissions that are not elected. The city has a number of boards and commissions that are looking for volunteers right now. If you are interested, please check the city website. We would love to have you come and serve.
same as the county. Fill out the interest form.
Fill out the interest form. We would
It's
love to
an
have
easy
you come and
form.
serve. Yeah.
And we also look for volunteers at our works. So basically, everybody's looking for people to become engaged, and that's what we hope for with this exhibit. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.